Welcome to Repstugog. I'm Tectonic Improv, and it's time for a review.
Rend, slaughter, devour your enemies. There is no other way to survive. You cannot escape your hunger, warriors of purgatory.
Today's game is a spin-off to the long-standing and critically acclaimed Shin Megami Tensei series. Digital Devil Saga first released in 2004, but was localized stateside a year later. Digital Devil Saga is a very fascinating game, thanks in part to both the content of the game itself and its development history. For starters, its world and plot was a collaboration between Atlus and outside writer Yu Godai. Due to health reasons, Godai wasn't able to stay on the project long term. Despite that though, she's still credited for creating Digital Devil Saga's scenario, so her mark was definitely left on this project. But if that wasn't enough, in a Full Metal Alchemist-like move, a few years later, Godai penned a series of light novels called Quantum Devil Saga Avatar Tuner, which contains her interpretation of the story she helped create with Atlus when working on DDS. It's 5 volumes long, and unfortunately, only the first 2 volumes were translated into English. Even worse, they're long out of print and are pretty hard to find online. It's a shame, since according to the people that do own a copy, it's a great read. Digital Devil Saga is a duology and was planned to be one from the start. That said, compared to other behemoth RPGs Atlus put out at the time, Digital Devil Saga 1 is a significantly smaller game. But just because it's smaller than some of its contemporaries, that doesn't necessarily mean it's lesser. By the end of this review, I hope you'll have as positive of an impression of Digital Devil Saga as I do, because without showing my hand too early, I found this to be a wonderful JRPG. Starting off with a brief breakdown of the premise, Digital Devil Saga takes place in a location known as the Junkyard, a world consisting of dilapidated yet technologically advanced buildings, wastelands, and the occasional familiar landmark reminiscent of our world. It's also under a perpetual drizzle. The denizens of the Junkyard ally themselves with one of the 6 tribes, which are all locked in a battle that has raged on for as long as anyone can remember. We take control of a man named Serph, who is the leader of the Embryon tribe. During what appears to be a routine skirmish against a rival tribe called the Vanguards, an unknown force crashes in between the 2 factions, followed by a blinding white light that leaves all of the tribe members, most importantly Serph and his comrades Heat, Argilla, Cielo, and Gale, with a brand on their bodies. At first, it isn't clear what this brand exactly did to them since there's a gap in their memories after the flash. When they finally come to, the battlefield has been completely torn apart. While investigating the aftermath, they make their way to the impact crater of the source of that blinding light, only to find an unconscious woman lying inside. Unlike all other people at the Junkyard, this girl's hair is a plain black instead of a garish neon pink or purple, which causes confusion. The members of the Embryon take this girl back to their base and then head to the Vanguards to get to the bottom of what happened in their skirmish. Turns out, the Vanguards are well aware of what went down at that battle. The brands on their bodies are a signifier that they have been transformed into demons known as Atma avatars. Monsters that crave the Atma, aka the flesh, of other Atma avatars. These transformations have occurred with everyone in the Junkyard. All of the remaining tribes convene at a neutral zone and are told by an omniscient being that the last tribe standing shall ascend to Nirvana. Atma escalates the ineffectual border skirmishes into a full-on war, with Serph and his comrades hoping to be the tribe to ascend, and with Sarah in their hands, they might just be able to do it. Despite being composed of mostly brown locales, Digital Devil Saga's unique premise and lore manages to elevate the Junkyard into a wonderfully well-realized setting. If the death game angle doesn't immediately hook players in, then the mystique of what Nirvana is, why everyone is turning into demons, and who Sarah is will. My only substantial issue with the Junkyard is its lack of an overworld. Instead, there's merely a menu which takes you directly to specific locations. I appreciate this if for no other reason than it doesn't waste my time, but I also believe it makes the world feel smaller in scale. This complaint notwithstanding, I still found myself grabbed by the setting. but if nothing so far has managed to grab you, perhaps the soundtrack will. With this being a PS2 Shin Megami Tensei game, the music is handled by none other than Shoji Meguro, alongside Kenichi Tsuchiya. Meguro likely needs no introduction, as he's probably one of the most iconic composers in the field of JRPGs, being responsible for the soundtracks of Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne to the Persona series. Kenichi Tsuchiya, on the other hand, is less well known, despite having a hand in many of the same projects as Meguro. Some places credit Tsuchiya with these specific tracks, however, I'm not sure how they would know who did what songs. Nonetheless, these are great moody tracks. But Meguro, being the lead composer, steals the show. Not every track is a crazy, guitar-shredding hard rock piece. Instead, Meguro shows restraint by making a lot of atmospheric tunes that still manage to have foot-tapping melodies. Muladhara, your main bass for a majority of the game, is one of the standouts. It really manages to capture this homely yet dour feeling, thanks in part to the low tempo and opening piano. Then the guitar comes in and fucking kills it. The battle themes are the absolute best tracks, bar none though. Digital Devil Saga takes a page from the likes of Earthbound and SMT3 Nocturne by having multiple battle themes. Although, instead of the latter's approach of changing depending on your location, they change based on the current situation you're in. On one hand, this means that there is slightly less variety in the battle themes, meaning the standard battle theme is the one you'll be hearing the most. But on the other hand, it allows Meguro to compose battles that could occur in specific contexts to better align with the story. And since DDS is much more story-focused, this approach works for the better, in my opinion. Also, the main battle theme is fucking awesome. I never got tired of hearing it during my playthrough. There's even a version that plays whenever you're ambushed that starts with a more quiet introduction. I like to end my turn just as the music picks up, feels really appropriate. However, that's not even the best this game has to offer. The other battle themes like Hunting Compulsion and Hunting Comrades stand as not just my favorite tracks in the game, but maybe even some of my favorite battle themes in any RPG I've played. They're that good. I also want to give a shout out to the insert song used for the attract mode cutscene, Endless by Etro Anime. I don't want to say too much because this is Repstugog, not the Needle Drop, but I will say that this song and the album it's on are really great downtempo electronica that could all probably fit in this game somewhere. My favorite track is Diablo. Buy it on Bandcamp. Transition. Back to Meguro's compositions though, the battle themes are just one component of the fights in the game. So let's jump into the gameplay of DDS next. Those familiar with mainland Shin Megami Tensei games starting with Nocturne should feel right at home here. DDS uses something called the press turn system, and it works like this. Turns in a battle are determined by these icons in the corner of the screen. One character's action, be it a regular attack, a skill, using an item, switching up party members, everything. It consumes one press turn icon. The maximum number of these icons is tied to the current total of active party members. Most of the time, every member of your party will be able to get at least one attack off per turn, but it's a little more complex than that. Missing an enemy or hitting them with an element they're not affected by costs 2 press turns, and using elements that drain or reflect take away all of your turns. That sounds pretty debilitating, but it goes both ways. Because if you manage to hit an enemy's weakness, one of your press turn icons will flash, which gives you one extra, non-replenishable turn. The battle system in DDS is all about exploiting enemy weaknesses and overwhelming them in the action economy, to borrow a term. These mechanics are ripped almost one for one from Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne, and while they still work well, I don't think it's as well done. My biggest issue with the gameplay is your party total. It's 3 as opposed to Nocturne's 4. Since there's one less party member, there's one less press turn, so combat can become pretty swingy if a party member gets knocked unconscious. Now, to be fair, every character can use items in battles, and it isn't an automatic game over if Serph dies, unlike in Nocturne, but even still, I found encounters to be scary with even one party member down. It's not impossible to come back from a bad ambush or anything, but Digital Devil Saga still likes to remind you every now and then that you're playing a
real Shin Megami Tensei game.
Thankfully though, they weren't content with just slapping on a battle system from another game completely unchanged. The inciting incident of DDS is everyone awakening to their Atma avatar abilities, turning into ravenous demons hell-bent on satisfying their hunger. This is actually translated into gameplay. All of your party members can learn moves that are classified as hunt moves. These moves deal a relatively small amount of base damage, but if they're used to kill an enemy, they grant the character a large amount of Atma points. There's also a status effect called Frighten that removes the damage nerf on hunting skills, as well as gives them a higher crit chance. Frighten can't be induced through any skills, only actions and battles, like completely stonewalling an enemy with null abilities, or hitting them with a weakness. Frightening enemies and then consuming them is the most reliable method to obtain Atma points. Atma points, or AP, is basically like a second EXP meter that when maxed out grants you a suite of skills. There's this entire grid of mantras that function like a skill tree. If you master a mantra at the beginning of a line, you can move on to the next one. The ones that are connected have skills in common, and the stronger the skills, the more expensive the mantra. There's no armor or weapons in this game to buy, just consumables, so mantras are your main money sink for this game, and Maka is absolutely flowing from these demons, encouraging you to branch out and take a chance on a new ability. One character can only equip one mantra at a time, and to equip a new mantra, you need to be at a save point. On paper, this sounds like you'll spend dungeons with maxed out mantras without a save point in sight, and sure, that'll probably happen at some point, but it's a lot less common than you think, since Digital Devil Saga has to have the most amount of save points out of any JRPG I've ever played. It's one of those design decisions I really appreciate, and I'm sure was done to help get newbies into SMT. If you read interviews from around the time this game released, it's clear that was the intention. Digital Devil Saga is also very lenient with its MP. MP pools are plentiful, skills are dirt cheap. And MP healing items are even cheaper, meaning that you'll likely never make it to the end of a dungeon completely drained of resources. If I knew that MP would be so easy to come by, I probably would have spec'd Serph into a magic build. Yet another philosophy that makes this game good for beginners is its length, and the amount of grinding required to beat it. This game is a very breezy experience for a JRPG. I finished it in under 25 hours. And on top of that, I did it with very minimal grinding. There was one fight where I took maybe 10 to 15 minutes to grab a new mantra, but most of the time, any roadblock was overcome by returning to the fight more specialized for it. Now, I'm not trying to say this game is easy or anything. Remember, Shin Megami Tensei game. There are even some post-game boss fights that should satiate your desire for a truly brutal experience. One in particular that's so insane, it's widely considered one of the toughest super bosses in the genre. Now look, could have gone ahead and fought it for this review, and I was gonna. Then I saw that I would have to fight it on New Game Plus, with a max level of 99 to even stand a chance. That's likely another 10 hours of grinding at least, on top of progressing through the story again like normal. I don't really derive pleasure from these insanely hard JRPG bosses, and this encounter in particular sorta goes against everything I like about this game, so I'm gonna pass. But this is all optional stuff, it's there if you want to engage with it. When it comes to the main story, whenever Digital Devil Saga knocks you down, it always offers to help you back up after. Just be careful during that final dungeon, it's quite the gauntlet, and dwarfs the rest of the dungeons, which I found to be of an appropriate length, fun to explore, and rewarding to solve. Once again, save points were frequent throughout, so even the longer excursions didn't bother me much. The same can also be said for the dungeon gimmicks. They're your usual fare, fake floors, trick doors, nothing you haven't seen before. Occasionally though, there will be sections where you do something called a field hunt, which strikes me as a shallow attempt to make exploring dungeons more action-oriented and exciting. But all it really does is remind me how
video games have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Finally, I want to talk about the story. If you don't want the plot spoiled for you, skip to the conclusion timestamped in the description. Digital Devil Saga has a story that manages to stay engaging throughout its entire runtime. All major cutscenes are voiced, and at first I was worried that this would lead to performances that hadn't held up when playing the game over 15 years later. This was enforced by the downright wooden performances of the main cast.
Are you sad?
What is sad?
I'm not sure.
But those fears turned out to be unfounded. Those wooden performances were an intentional decision, as the people of the Junkyard have no emotions. It's only when they awaken to their Atma forms do they begin to emote, regaining some of their humanity. Each party member has one emotion that seems to overpower the rest. Argilla's is compassion, Heat's is anger, Ciel's is humor, Gale's is... Gale is actually interesting since he awakens to his emotions very late into the game and also appears to have some sort of connection to Angel, the game's primary antagonist. Finally, there's Serph, who doesn't really have any sort of emotion that breaks through. He's the main character and also a silent protagonist. There are moments where you're prompted to pick a specific line of dialogue, but as far as I know, it doesn't affect the story in any meaningful way. I'll be the first to defend the silent protagonist, but I couldn't help but feel Serph might have been better off as his own character. Maybe this is explained away in the sequel. After all, there's a lot of unanswered questions by the end, like what Angel's plan really was, what their relationship is with Gale, and most of all, what happened to the real world. The Junkyard is revealed to be a simulated world that the characters were placed in after some sort of cataclysmic event occurred. It's a bit of a gut punch to find out that the Nirvana waiting for all of our characters this whole time was really just another hell. Oh shit. I just took that from the... Digital Devil Saga's story is definitely meant as one half of a whole, which may disappoint some players. Personally, I don't think it's a bad thing, since the journey the Embryon goes through is very engaging, and the primary goal of the game, escaping the Junkyard, is accomplished by the credits, albeit with some hiccups. All of the open-ended aspects of the story are most definitely answered in Digital Devil Saga 2, a game that Westerners only had to wait a mere 6 months to play. Maybe it'll only take the Repstugog review that long too. I consider myself an avid enthusiast of JRPGs, so don't take it lightly when I call Digital Devil Saga an absolutely fantastic game. It feels like the work of a well-oiled machine. So much of the game, from its story, atmosphere, music, and gameplay, managed to impress me on many levels. My complaints are both minor and few in numbers. Game overs are sometimes one ambush away. The locales can feel somewhat similar to one another, and occasional moments in the story that make me scratch my head, like Heat's betrayal about a third of the way through. I don't think it's out of character for him to do something like that, but it's resolved almost as fast as it starts, and everyone just kind of acts like it never happened. But really, these complaints aren't enough to bring down the experience in any meaningful way. Digital Devil Saga is one of the best JRPGs I've played on the PlayStation 2, and hopefully its sequel can manage to reach the same heights.